Right, so this is our dogfish. I've cut sort of this slightly oval shape into its stomach. Normally what I would do is I'd sort of widen this so we've got a proper rectangle, but I wanted you to see this structure on the inside. So this huge organ here is the stomach, very large, muscular, and here we've got sort of this, almost like this J shape going into this region called the pyloric. This down here is the intestine, and if you're lucky, when you open up your shark, initially, if everything sort of doesn't spill out the sides, you should see this really nice sort of looped structure where you've got stomach leading to the intestine. Now the other thing to note is that sharks have 3 liver sections, and this is one of them. It's really small, right at the top, this sort of tooth-shaped structure. Now I'll show you the other 2. They're much larger, so we'll pull those out. That's one. And there's the other. So we've got 3 sections to the liver. Stomach is down here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to widen the cut down the side of the animal. One thing you need to be sort of aware of, the skin is sort of about 2-3 mil thick. So when you initially cut into the shark, what I normally do is I cut straight down, and what you might find, if you're a bit tentative with it, you'll cut in and you'll only slice through the scales, and so when you pull that open, you'll just see a layer. You'll see this layer of muscle. So cut a bit further. Obviously, if you burst the stomach, it's going to be a bit messy, but it's not a problem. Just have lots of tissue paper to hand. You might find that because sharks don't have a swim bladder, they're very, very oily, and so you might find there's an awful lot of sort of liquid, oil, a lot of mess that comes out when you do this. So I'm just going to widen the sections here. Now this is a female, and I'll show you how we can tell. So if we look down at the cloaca, down here, we can tell this is a female because she doesn't have claspers. So claspers are these long sort of fin appendages that go straight down here from the pelvic fins. These sort of extra, they secure the female, they hold on to her in order to inject sperm. Now we don't have a male to show you, but if you just sort of Google online looking at claspers on sharks, you'll see these extra long appendages right at the end of the fin. So back up to the main organism. As I said, this is the stomach, really, really large muscular structure. Now at the top, I'm just going to cut a bit further up. At the top we've got, underneath the liver, we've got the esophagus, which would lead down into the stomach. So I don't know, I'll remove the liver in a moment so we can see that a bit more clearly. The stomach sort of makes this sort of turning up, this sort of U shape, and into the intestine here. Now you'll notice these spiral structures on the intestine. We're going to open that up and have a look at it in a bit more detail. But one of the things I want to do first with this is, the other way you can tell this is female is because she has egg sacs. So you may or may not see this in your specimen. This sort of gloopy, we've quite clearly got ovaries there, this sort of gloopy structure. If that bursts, then that does get quite messy. So what I'm going to do, and this sort of feeds around all of the stomach. And remember, the general cavity of the stomach we call the coelom. So we talked about that before, how coeloms are created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can remove the ovaries without letting them burst too much. See, they've already burst a little bit there, but it's just to avoid getting a lot of mess. If the stomach or the ovaries, if they do burst, it's not a problem. Just have lots of tissue paper, and we just want to sort of get it out the way, really. There we go. Right, okay. So here here we've got another egg sac. This is much more well developed. So on this side we had sort of smaller eggs developing, and as they become larger, they move through this tract and down here. Now, what we actually have from another specimen is a much more developed embryo. So this would have sat here, and then this is the reproductive tract here as well, and that leads down to the cloaca, just like the digestive tract. So they lead to exactly the same place. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out I'll take out the liver first. So we can see this a little bit more clearly. Up here we've got the esophagus. That leads down to the stomach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the stomach, and then we're going to have a look inside, see if there is anything in there. Okay, so that noise you could hear is all the muscle in the stomach. So we're going to move there. Is that all right? Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so the stomach is emptying anyway, we'll have to clean this up. But sometimes, yeah, okay, here we go. Little bits of undigested or partly digested fish. So you might have a stomach contents which is quite full. We've got something else large in here. Another piece of, that looks like a shrimp. In another specimen we had, there was a piece of crab. It's quite large. So have a look in the stomach. You'll probably find some odd bits and pieces. Now in the small intestine, so we've got the pyloric part which connects the two. Now the small intestine has got this sort of spiral structure. So I'm just going to cut into that so you can see it. So again, we've got more undigested, or mostly digested parts in here, but you can see these here. These make up the spiral structure that runs on the inside. So the intestine is much less muscular, but these spiral structures help to sort of push food down. So I'm just going to remove all of this. You are going to get very messy. Between digestive fluids and pieces and oil and everything, you will get very messy doing this. Right, okay, so let's go back to our shark, is that right? Yep. So let's remove these egg sacs. Well, this is the other reproductive. So sperm would enter through here and go up into the ovaries. Actually, we don't need to remove the other egg sacs to be able to see this. Now, this blue line here, it's not particularly clear in this specimen, but you might find it a bit clearer in yours. It's a little bit more obvious maybe down here. You'll see these sort of bluish, reddish lines that run sort of right next to where the notochord would be in the embryo, against the back of the fish. Those are blood vessels, and either side of them, if you run your finger either side, it's almost, you can almost sort of see where they are. So we've got one line here and one line here, and it's bumpy all the way up. Those are the kidneys. So there's no structural organ in sharks where the kidneys are, and we have a whole session on kidneys, so we will cover this in much more detail. But that's where the kidneys are. Okay. So if we look further up, we want to have a look at the gills. So you will probably need some strong scissors to do this, because there is a bar that runs across like that between the two pectoral fins, and that gives it strength and support. So I'm going to cut through that, and that noise you heard will have been the bone breaking through. And what you're going to do is cut all the way up to the mouth and cut straight through the jawbone. So the next structure we're going to look at is, we're going to look at the heart, and then we'll look at the gills. A bit fiddly. As soon as you see the heart, when you come to do your own dissection, you'll know sort of what to avoid cutting. Okay, so in here we've got, you can probably already see this sort of burgundy, bloody cavity here. So this is the heart. Now the heart has only 2 cavities. Ours has 4, you might know. So we've got 1 ventricle and 1 atrium. So the atrium is much, much smaller. We've got a bit of blood coming out, so it's hard to sort of tell them apart. But this large structure here, this is the ventricle. So blood that runs is returning to the heart from the body will enter the heart through a structure just underneath, which is sort of this. Let me get some tissue. A structure just underneath the heart called the sinus venosus, and it is this, you'll see it's like a cloudy colour, like a triangular shaped cloudy colour just underneath the heart, the sinus venosus. So it enters via the sinus venosus, goes into the atrium, into the ventricle, and out through a structure just above the heart. I'll just cut this away so we can see that a bit more clearly. Yeah, this sort of channel, you see this sort of slightly paler channel just above the heart. That's the conus arterius. So blood will flow up through there and out into the gills on either side and become reoxygenated. And that's something we're going to look at in the gas exchange lecture. So we're going to have a look at the gills then. Sometimes it is easier to cut away the fin on one side. So we're looking at the side of the animal here, looking at the gills here. The gills go directly into the gill chamber, and the gill chamber, if we look inside the mouth of the shark, you might be able to see it's got quite a small head. I'll have to cut it open. Just going to cut one of the sides of the jaw off. It's obviously quite strong bones inside the jaw, so you might have a bit of difficulty doing this. Actually, you can see now, so I've opened up the side of the mouth. This white structure here is the jawbone that I've cut into pieces now. But you can see the gills. Each of these is a gill arch. You can see them lined up against each other here. And these tiny, tiny little sort of filaments, these are the gill filaments, these sort of feathery structures. And so blood travels up from the heart out into the gills and goes through these filaments to get reoxygenated. Okay, I think that's it.